I am Modular, and welcome back to Satisfactory. Phase 3 has been completed, and to recap the save so far, I've put together a shorter world tour to show it all off. Each phase introduces new tech, items, and toys to play with Phase 2 being steel, 3 oil, and now with 4, I get to play with aluminum. Each new production has its own challenges. With oil, we got a taste of what it's like to deal with a byproduct. As many of you already know, aluminum is where that challenge really gets amplified. But have no fear, I have an easy solution that will make aluminum just seem like any other factory. Like the start of every other phase, we're starting it off right next to the hub. And now that it's at its new home, I finally get to see if this hole is big enough, or if it's going to clip right into it. No time to waste, let's get this started. So if we go through it, basically everything else in here will need aluminum in both tiers 7 and 8, I believe. So I need to do this first. However, I know that this is actually a really short round trip time for the pod, and I may actually have this already. Let's see. Got the heavy modular frames, computers, and the motors. Just had to wait 25 seconds for that to refill, but that wasn't too bad. And last but not least, I've picked up 383 of the aluminum sheets around the crash sites already, so I can just do this right away.
Milestone reached. The hover pack draws energy from nearby power connections, and so can only be used in their vicinity. It provides an excellent vantage point of your work, which you clearly need. Otherwise, you would have optimized that obvious problem by now.
Hey, there's no obvious problems. They're all just really hidden. Aw, yes, back to the hover pack. Ah, it's so nice. And they've made such nice improvements. It's got a little bit bigger of a range, I think, than it used to. But for a while, instead of coming to a complete stop, you would just kind of drift ever so slightly. And it was really annoying. But now it's rock steady, and it sure does help building. And now I can go ahead and select this, and make sure I get everything, and in 2 minutes I can send this one off. But while I wait, the other thing that I do want to set up rather soon is, well, unfortunately another temporary setup. And the reason for it, if we look under the select milestones, the hazmat suit is not expensive to unlock. I have the 100 aluminum casings from just the crash pods. But what I haven't set up yet are gas filters. But first we send this off, and I'm actually going to watch the drop pod because I completely forgot to the first time.
Milestone reached. Bauxite is refined into aluminum products via a multi-step process. Considering your past achievements,
close enough.
You should have the minimum required skill to overcome these new production challenges. If it helps, many others have done this before, so if you fail, someone else will eventually succeed.
At least Earth has a backup plan. Alright, so it looks like I made it just big enough. And now that I've unlocked the aluminum refinement, I can go ahead and come to my MAM, and I've got 20 hard drives just waiting to be scanned. This milestone has unlocked quite a few alternate recipes, so it's going to take a couple of these hard drives to get all of my options. And with aluminum, I just really like the alternate recipes. But we'll get to that in a second. First, I need to make some more filters. Because I unfortunately only have 54, which means I can unlock iodine filters, and then I've got 4 left. So it seems like I should probably make some more. Put the assembler down, but I need a manufacturer to make these. So, fabric I have automated, iron plates I have automated. For a little bit, I was kind of mad at Past Move for not having these automated inside this factory. But then I remembered I did think about doing it, and the reason was the coal. Right now I'm bringing over 120 coal and 120 sulfur, because that's what I had left over from the turbo factory and just milking everything I could out of the nodes. And down here, it's being all used for either turbo fuel or explosives, basically. So if I used any of the coal for filters, then I would have just had leftover sulfur, and I just decided I wanted to use all of those, and the filters were clearly a future move problem, and, well, it sucks to be him now. So I'm just going to pull out a whole bunch of stacks of fabric, a bunch of stacks of iron plates. Those will go into these bins. The nearby coal nodes are both being used for my turbo fuel, so even though I need a little bit, I don't really want to grab it from there. Seems like a bad idea. So to deal with that, I'm going to place a constructor. That looks lined up. There really are no bad alternate recipes, because it's just a trade-off. Whether it's worth it to you is totally up to you and where you are in the game and the situation around it. I happen to have a whole bunch of biomass just sitting around, and one of the more random alternate recipes that rarely gets used are these alternates right down here. I can turn that biomass into coal. And since this is a temporary setup, and I want to get the most bang for the buck here, I'm going to go ahead and summer sloop it. And it just happens to be right here. So we can just grab a couple stacks of biomass, throw them in another bin, and this will crank out a whole bunch of filters for me. I would like to automate them at some point, but this should give me plenty to be able to last for quite a while. And just to make my life easy, we're just going to go ahead and just drop a dimensional depot right on top of here. Look at those beautiful little filters. Oh, and I forgot. I might as well sloop this one too. Yep, plenty of aluminum casing already in my depot. Just in time, let's go ahead and turn everything in. I'm not sure when exactly they made this change, but I am so happy they made this change. It used to be that the hazmat suit showed up over your overalls, and so everybody looked the same once you had hazmat suits on. And I'm so glad that it doesn't actually show anymore. The hover pack does just look so cool. Think I heard my ma'am. Gonna keep on knocking these out until I have all of them scanned. I'm just gonna let this work away, and I have the power grid, so we could make it go a little bit faster. Who cares about the power? 738, that's so great. Oh yeah, plenty of room. So I'm gonna let this work its way through, because for the next step, I need aluminum casing, and I have some, but if I want to make a bunch of these, I should probably have those automated so that I can drop a few hundred in here. For some reason, I haven't added a radar tower to this home area yet. I'm not really sure why, but now that it's available, I can just do the good old ping for bauxite. And hey, there's some just right over there. So that is the closest bauxite, and thankfully, we've got bauxite and we've got water. So if we look on the map, there's a couple close, but for the very first setup, it's going to be temporary, so I just need one node. So now I'm just going to go over there, pick up some slugs, clear out the critters, and lay some foundations down, and then we'll get to work. Probably clear out these. Love being able to just crouch and fly right at them. So much easier. The foundation and the miner is placed, so let's go over the plan real quick. This is a normal node, so with the Mk.3 miner, I can get 300 bauxite out of here. I'm going to be using the sloppy alumina alternate recipe to create that alumina solution. Then I'll be using the default aluminum scrap recipe to combine the alumina solution with coal to create the alumina scrap. It also gives me a byproduct of water. The combination of sloppy alumina and pure aluminum ingot is probably my favorite to use, and it's the reason why I started scanning hard drives right away. It cuts out all the silica from the production chain. I love that there's so many ways to make this, but unless you're really looking to maximize things, I really prefer the simple solution with this one. And then I'm going to turn all of the ingots into either aluminum sheets or the casings. Since the sheets get used for the Mark V belts, and I don't have a huge use for the casings right now except for a couple unlocks, I'm going to make way more of the aluminum sheets. This is way more than I need, but it'll help me get all the unlocks done quickly, and it'll give me all of the Mark V belt materials I need so that I can go and create a bigger, more permanent aluminum factory solution somewhere else. So the only downside is if we look at coal and we look at the map, the closest one by far is this one right here. Now, because a cartographer, you can already see, I decided to go and lay out the foundations and grab the next closest one. It goes on a bit of a journey, and it is not pretty. I will warn you right now. So if we come over here, it's basically just a whole bunch of floating platforms. Just try to avoid as much of the big trees as I could, and the little ones, I didn't feel as bad. Like I said, this is temporary. And I know we all say that probably way too much, but I promise this is going to get deleted by the end of the video. So the coal is just going to come up here. I just need to add the lift here and then just, you know, a little bit of belt work to get it from here all the way over to there. Thankfully, I only need 180, so it's really not too bad. And let's see, can we still keep scanning? We can keep on scanning. Since I've got a little bit more time until I've got all the alternate recipes, I'm going to go ahead and do that belt work right now. Alright, well I've got the ones I need, so let's go ahead and take the sloppy alumina and the pure aluminum ingot. And now my coal has a beautiful belt to snake through the red forest on. So now I've got my bauxite and my coal. And I've got water right here. This should be pretty easy. Alright, now I've got power over here so I can actually use my hover pack. Let's start building. The main component is refineries. So for this first one, I'm just going to place it, I think right here is going to give it plenty of space. This will be doing our sloppy alumina. I'm going to overclock this to 150% so it uses up all 300 bauxite. And so this one will require 300 water. This will be important. This produces 360 alumina solution. So now I just need a second refinery. And with this one, I'm just going to give it some space. So I'm just going to center it on this one. I should probably do that with both of them actually. We'll just center these. Alright, so first one is the alumina solution, since I had to replace it. There we go. So that one can be white. This one is doing the aluminum scrap. Normally it would take 240, but this is producing 360. So if we overclock this one to 150% as well, it'll match it. I'll need 180 coal, which is going to be coming from over there. It's going to be producing 540 aluminum scrap, which is a slight problem because I only have Mark IV belts, but yeah, we'll worry about that in a second. And then this gives us a byproduct of 180 water. And I think with aluminum, we're just going to go unpainted. Seems like a good color for aluminum. And then I'll just temporarily place this foundation. So this right here is where the bauxite is going to get plugged in, and we need a Mark IV. So I just need a belt to plug in right there. I'm just going to do all the easy stuff first, get those out of the way. So the output, the alumina solution, 360. So I do need a Mark II pipe, but that is just going to plug in right to the side. So we've got the solution. Now I just need the coal. And I'm just going to do a similar thing just to get the height right. It's a little bit easier if I have a reference. And so now we'll just bring this up to the correct height. It needs 180, so that's a Mark III. And we can plug the coal in right there. No clipping. Looks good. Alright, so now the two complicated parts. The water, and then the scrap. Let's just go ahead and knock this out of the way. This is outputting 180 water. This one requires 300. So I'm short 120. So we have to make sure that this gets used or else the whole thing shuts down. This is a very challenging part of the game, and the great thing about it is there are actually quite a few different ways that will work. It really kind of comes down to a preference, and in some scenarios, some methods probably work much better than others. So I'm going to show you the method that I prefer to use, but the one method that I can promise you will always work is for the alumina solution. Plug in exactly how much water you need. So if it's just one refinery, you plug in 300. If you're doing a bigger system, you know, every 2 machines would use 600. Plug in that amount of water. And then with the byproduct, you're just going to place more refineries and have those deal with the water. And you can use that water for any of the pure recipes. So you could make iron or copper or caterium. But the wet concrete is the tried and true method because each refinery at just 100% clock speed will use 100 water per minute. To use up the same amount of water for, say, copper, you're going to place a whole bunch of refineries. And if you decide you want to use the concrete, just make sure you have your smart splitter set up so that if anything ever backs up, it'll always have a sink to go to. And that system is extremely reliable and really pretty hard to go wrong with. So if you're ever having trouble, it may take a little bit more room, a little bit more work, but that system will work. Not to say that mine doesn't. Mine works very well too, I think. And by the end of the video, we will definitely put it to the test. Alright, so for the water, what I'm going to do is I am just going to attach these two. A quick pipe lesson for those of you new to it. Here is a pipeline junction. This right here is what I like to call a priority pipeline junction. So there's similarities between the merger and the priority merger, and then the junction and the priority junction. The difference is belts only travel one direction, and you have mergers and splitters, whereas the pipes are bidirectional, and so you just have the junction. When everything is flat, it basically has all the same priority. However, when it's vertical like this, you can think of the priorities as high, medium, and low at the top. And thankfully right here in the middle of the foundation is right in the middle of the pipes, and so unfortunately you have to offset it by 1 meter when you want to do it vertically. But that's alright. So now the byproduct water is being fed into the junction and then into this refinery. And now what I'm going to do is grab another pipe, and I'm going to use the horizontal to vertical, and we're just going to create this fun little thing. And that's where the water extractor is going to get plugged in. Just can't bring it too close, but that's okay. And I can just leave this at 100% because I'm missing 120 water from this system. But the great thing about this setup is it means that this pipe will always be prioritized over this pipe going into the junction. So even if this water extractor gets completely full, or even if it's outputting more than 120 water, this pipe is still going to be prioritized, and this refinery will always empty. But talk is cheap. We're going to test it out. We have a few more machines to place before we can test it all out. Next, I need 4 smelters. There we go. 4 smelters, and these are going to be doing the pure aluminum ingot. So in total, I'll be making 270 aluminum ingots because it's a 2-to-1, and we're making 500 of the aluminum scrap. Oh, it went away. And I'm going to be using 4 machines, so 67.5 for each one. And for 4 machines, the load balancing is nice and easy. Just put 2 there, and then 1 in the middle. And then we've got a Mark IV belt, which isn't quite fast enough, but the very first unlock is the Mark V belt, so we'll be fine. And for the other side, we're just going to do a similar thing. I'm just going to go ahead and merge them up. Could just do the normal manifold, but we've got plenty of space. We have all 270 grouped up. Now I just need to split it back up. So I'm going to place 1 splitter here, and then 1 merger to the side. So I've got 270 going into here, and then I'll have 90, 90, and then 90. So with this first 90, we're going to go ahead and send that right into a constructor. It's going to do the aluminum casing. So 1 machine, 100%, it'll turn 90 into 60. And that one is done. For the next part, I need a little bit more space. I think I'm actually going to have to add a few foundations here. That's alright. I need a total of 3 assemblers. If the game yells at you that the surface is too uneven, just hit H to lock the hologram, and there's a good chance it'll still let you place it. But I am still going to support it anyways, because I'm still going to need a place to put the storage. Alright, so load balancing 3 machines, pretty easy. Let's go ahead and just set these for aluminum sheets. Normally I would need 6 machines, but I'm just going to overclock them all to 200%, so I just need 3. Okay, so each one needs 20 copper ingots, so that means I still need 60 copper ingots. So thankfully I can do that in just 1 smelter. If I overclock this to 200%, that'll get me on my 60 ingots. So now I just need to find 60 copper ore. But before I go find that copper, there's one other thing I want to do real quick. So I know it's silly, but I just didn't like the idea of it running inefficient for a little while and then having to come back and upgrade the belt. It would have only taken 5 minutes, but as you can see, I had just enough to go ahead and unlock the Mark V belts, and I went ahead and upgraded it. It's the only one that I needed to be Mark V, because this will have 540 on there, and I only had 480 belts. But now this thing will be able to ramp up to 100%, nice and quick. Just to make sure I didn't have issues, I just upgraded the pipes to Mark II. I don't think there would have been any sort of issue. I don't normally have any problems with putting 300 in a Mark I pipe. But I also just really like the look of the Mark II clean pipes. Got the belt work taken care of for the assemblers, and then for the outputs, I've got them going into smart splitters, and then there's a merger just right in between them. And then the overflow will basically just go into the awesome sink. So, just one last part. I kind of need to plug in some copper. I don't actually need to ping for copper now. I forgot. I decided right next to the coal power plant would be an easy place to add one. I just couldn't quite figure out where I would want one on my home factory, so I just put it over here. It's nice and close, covers pretty much the same area. And now if we take a look at the map, I can see a bunch of the nearby resources. And unfortunately, copper isn't really one of them. So it looks like it's either this one or... yeah, it looks like this one. Okay, so copper is not very plentiful in this area. Probably blind and missing one. But that is the one that I'm going to go get. So just like the coal, it's just going to be a little bit longer. I'm just going to do some gross temporary floating foundations to bring a copper line all the way over to here. But it's temporary, I swear. And we're back. And we are ready to start this thing. So I went ahead and got the copper up and running. It has a bit of a ways to go. So we just have to follow it all the way back here. Like I said, it's a gross and disgusting, but super temporary setup. I promise. I promise it's temporary. And yeah, copper is coming from all the way over here. Because it has so far to go, I decided to just use Mark IV belts. That way it could get there a little bit faster. But the goal is by the end of the video, we'll have this all cleaned up because I'll have a permanent solution. It's very similar to when you unlock the oil and the rubber. You need to get a setup for plastic and rubber, but you're going to get some much better recipes and better technology that'll let you build a much better setup. So you just need to get a temporary going so you can get all your unlocks. So starting this thing up is going to be pretty easy. The water extractor is already on. It is completely full. And all of these pipes are also completely full. So now I just need to send in the coal and the bauxite. The coal had a little bit of a ways to go, so I thought it'd be easier just to turn it on and have it sinking here. Now I can just delete this, plug up those belts, and we're good to go. Now let's see how quick this thing can start producing those sheets and casings. And here we go. Not too shabby at all. Pretty quick to 100%. Obviously this hasn't been running too long, and that's really the true test for aluminum, is how long will it continue to run. But right now, we've got 60 casing and 180 aluminum sheets. Let's check on some of the machines. So first refinery in the process, yeah, we've definitely got plenty of water, so that's always a good sign. This is the tricky one. If this can continue to empty all of its water, then we should have no issues whatsoever. And so far it's looking good. You may see a pause and 2 cycles may build up every once in a while. The reason for it is this refinery has a cycle time of 0.7 seconds. If we look at the first refinery, its cycle time is only 2 seconds. So that's why you may see it pause for like 2 cycles, just because this one hasn't cycled to use up the water yet. But as long as it continues to go all the way down to 0 at some point, I am totally happy. And we might as well take a look at the water extractor. Completely full of water. Obviously this isn't at 100%. This one got turned on early, so the pipe was already filled up. So this was probably at like 0 to start, but once it continues to run, this will get up to 100%. But thanks to the good old priority junction, if we check the pipes, this one is probably always going to be completely full. This one should pretty much always be full. And even though this pipe is just always full, this refinery just continues to empty. So the real test will be if we can come back here in an hour, and if it's still running, we should be in pretty good shape. But I am very confident that I can just leave this how it is, and it will just continue to run. But no need to wait around. I can at least grab some of these and start unlocking more of the milestones. If we take a look at the hub, I went ahead and knocked out the control system development. I definitely had all of these built up already, so just knocked that one out. All of tier 7 is complete. And we've just got tier 8. But that is for later. Let's go ahead and take a look at my temporary setup. Alright, so now we can come over here and we can switch this one over to the iodine infused filter. Just need a little bit of quick wire. Grab some more casing. Load up these containers. And then for this one, we can just plug that right in. Except for I need to remember to delete this belt and add another container, or else things just kind of stop working. And now I'm finally going to be able to use my hazmat suit. And now the filters have a new paint job. They're yellow. Let's go ahead and just slap a dimensional deep on here so I can at least fill up that. These will craft pretty quick, but for now, 20 is pretty good. Because there is something I've been wanting to do for a while, but it's just a little bit hard unless you have the filters and the suit. And you hear that sound? Yeah, that's a Mercer sphere nearby. And originally, I really thought it was in the cave down below because that's where the sand was, but I couldn't find it in there. And eventually I narrowed it down. They hid it inside this thing. There we go. There's my prize. Can never have too many Mercer spheres. Alright, so I moved my filters to over here. So I've still got a ton of gas filters and a decent amount of the iodine. I mean, my whole dimensional depot is full. And I can easily make more. But I figured this was good enough for now. I would like to have these actually automated at some point. But I don't need a ton, so this is going to last quite a while, and I guess I'll just revisit it later. It's one of those things I want to do eventually, but not a high priority. And since we've got this here, I might as well keep rolling with some more temporary setups. I'm going to go ahead and crank out just a few radio control units, because now that I have the casings, I've got crystal oscillators and plenty of computers. I'm definitely going to set up a permanent solution for these later, but for right now, I could use a few stacks of these for some more unlocks. So let's just empty all of our crystal oscillators and computers. There we go. Got my first radios. I do have quite a few coupons built up, so I could have just bought a few stacks, but I'd much rather just throw together a temporary solution for it instead. Oh, they're ugly, aren't they? I hate them. But that's kind of the point. I thought about building an area just for these kind of temporary setups, because they just inevitably happen. They're definitely not a permanent solution, and I like to get away from this as quickly as possible. When you just need a few stacks of something, especially now that we can double the production with the summer sloops, it's really nice to be able to just throw some of these down when you need them. So I did the same thing with supercomputers, just added another manufacturer. I don't need a ton of these, but I do need a couple stacks. I'm going to go ahead and let these continue, kind of work through all of their materials. And while they're doing that, I'm going to start working on the next project. And that's back out here next to my electronics factory. But it has nothing to do with the electronics factory. I'm here for the train line. I've got my little three-way intersection right here, where the main line can branch off to the electronics factory. And then currently, it just dead ends right here. But now I'm going to take it on a journey through the Titan Forest. Right now, the temporary aluminum factory is right here, using that coal and that copper. But what I want to do is bring my train line down over here. And then right in this area, I'm going to do the new factory. If I try to build this much closer to the bauxite nodes, just building within these trees is just a pain. And I don't want to deal with it. So I'm going to take these 4 nodes. And this should give me plenty of space to put a train station and do all of my bauxite refinement. And it may not be dead center, but it's fairly central located in the world, so hopefully shipping it around won't be too bad. So give me a second to build this out, and then we'll go on a quick little train ride. And we're back. Let's go for a little ride. Oh, there's still riffraff out here. Oh, he's so fast. And now I've got some more hog remains. So I made it out to just the edge of the forest. We take a look at the map. I basically added this section right here. I tried to stick to the train as best as I could through here, but then once we got to this point, I didn't really want to go down, and then this was going to be a decent sized cliff to go up because I didn't see a good way of trying to thread the needle through either of these. So up and over seemed like a better option. But now at least the train line is close, and building from here to wherever I needed to go should be much easier. And so here is our train line, just stops right here. I'm going to have it continue this way. And then right out here is going to be our train station and new factory. So we're getting close, but we're just going to turn this one around. I'm going to go ahead and head back home. Even though I said we weren't going to get to the tier 8 milestones, I just meant that we weren't going to do it right then. I'm not going to finish all of these today, but I am going to finish 2 of them. So the reason I wanted to do the radio control units right now was this milestone right here. This is going to unlock the resource well pressurizer, which I'm going to take advantage of later today, and the fuse modular frames, the upgrade to the heavy modular frame, and that is also pretty important for today. Because for my permanent bauxite factory, I would really like to be able to utilize the Mk.3 miners. And for that, I need the supercomputers, which is why I made a few stacks of those, and the fuse modular frames. So let's go ahead and knock out this one. Ada gives the best pep talks. Alright, so like I said, I want to do that. I have the 100 supercomputers by now. Fuse modular frames, however, I've got a whole 15. That check mark is always taunting you. It would be so easy just to buy 1 or 2 stacks, wouldn't it? But nope, instead I'm going to hop in my train, and we're going to head all the way out to the desert, and we're going to pay the heavy modular frame factory a visit. It's always nice to revisit a factory and see everything is still just working just the way it's supposed to be. Still cranking out 3 heavy modular frames a minute. This floor is already pretty full, but I think there's a little bit of spare room upstairs. Up here where I'm making the adaptive control units, I've got plenty of space. So let's take a look how we're doing. Dimensional depot is completely full, and we're getting there. Just about 2/3 of the way full. When I was building the factory, I originally had the roof about half the size, and I was going to try to fit everything over here and the storage, and it would have worked fine. But then I realized it would be easy just to make this floor the same size as the one below, and it would give me plenty of room to add a blender. Looks good to me. This blender is going to be making my fuse modular frame. And yep, that's singular. We're just going to make 1. I am making a total of 3 heavy modular frames below. 1 is being sent to the manufacturer right over here, leaving me with 2. I want at least 1 to go to storage, but that means I could have the other one come over here and be making my fuse modular frames, because I think 1 a minute going to my storage is gonna be fine for both heavy modular frames and fuse modular frames. Meaning I'm gonna need some aluminum casings. I am making them right now, but like I've said 10 times already, it's temporary. So what I want to do is get this thing basically set up most of the way, and then I'm just going to have 2 containers right here, so I can dump a couple of the heavy modular frames and some aluminum casing, but I do want to get the nitrogen gas already sorted out, because later on when I want to make this permanent, I just need to add 1 splitter, and that'll send 1 heavy modular frame over, and then I'll just need to set up a train to the permanent aluminum factory to bring over the casings that I need, and get those belted up here. Fuse modular frames with that good old fix-it orange. Looks good. As we can see on the map, here is the train station with my electronics chew coming in. Here's the factory we're at right now, and not too far is a nitrogen gas well. I definitely won't be able to see it from up here, but maybe in photo mode. If we could drop down there and then kind of turn the corner, pretty much directly behind this on the coastline is that nitrogen well. Let me get a little bit more infrastructure laid and I'll show you what it looks like. Well, I didn't set up too much yet. I just went ahead and used my power tower blueprints, and that way I could bring power all the way out to here. Because as we've all learned the hard way, you need power for these. And if you haven't used these yet, and what I just said sounds a little silly, because of course you need power. Here's the reason. Once I place it, it's a great looking building, by the way. Unlike miners, where we can still kind of set the speed and everything, this won't tell us anything until it's been powered on. And the way these work is these pressurize all of these nodes. And so these end nodes here are where we're extracting all the materials. Because there's resource wells for nitrogen, oil, and water. And so I need to be able to place this resource well extractor, except for, as we can see, must be placed on an activated fracking satellite node. So let's go ahead and power it on. And now I can place a resource well extractor on these. And this will actually give me a little bit more information, so 780 in total. Or if we fully overclock this, because why wouldn't we? We can get 1950 out of the whole thing. And so now the pure nodes will put out 300, and the normal ones will be 150. And if you look at the map, it'll give you even more information. I've used the one normal, and all the rest of them are going to be pure for this one. And because I need very little nitrogen, I am just going to use the one normal node. Let me tidy this up a little bit and get some pipes going from here back to the factory. Because nitrogen doesn't need any head lift, I'm just going to run a pipe. And here we have it. This is my preferred method of dealing with the resource wells, because the little satellite nodes are all at different elevations and they sit like inside of each of these things. Even if you put a foundation down there first, it's going to sit in that exact position no matter what. And so chances are it's just going to clip straight through your foundation, and it just looks kind of weird to me. So instead, what I'll normally do is just add floor holes right above them. Once they're all at the same elevation, then I can do a little bit of pipe work, and I just find it a lot easier to deal with that way. But since I just needed the one normal node, I just made a little pipeline. I just took this, and I figured I could clean up the power, and I deleted my power towers. Any of the gases or materials that are treated like gases, however Coffee Stain refers to the excited photonic matter and the dark matter residue, none of those require any head lift, and so I don't need any pumps. And then once we get to the factory, I just found a convenient spot to be able to bring it up until we get to this floor, and then I ran it across to the middle of the floor. And that way I could plug it into the blender right here. And now I've got my two bins, and I've already got the belt from the train station over to here set up, because I did that when I was initially setting up the factory. And then I've got my splitter ready, so eventually I'll just be able to replace this bin with that belt, and it'll be really easy to get this thing permanently up and running. But for now, we can go ahead and throw some sloops in there. Grab as many casings as I have. We're gonna just throw 2 in there. There we go. First fused modular frame. Alright, and after the first one, now the summer sloop kicks in, and I'll get 2 for each cycle. When I come back to set this up permanently, I'm just going to need to remember to pull those 4 out. But for now it's worth it because it's a 1 heavy modular frame to 50 casings. So I should probably empty some more of what I have into here so that this can run for just a little bit longer. I don't need a ton, I just need enough for an unlock and a few Mk.3 miners. And this should be able to get me just that. And I already have the storage and the dimensional depot set up, so I don't have to wait around for this. Alright, we're back. Let's get this thing turned in. Oh, Mk.3 miners. Feels so good to have these.
The Miner Mark III provides top-of-the-line resource extraction potential, making it even easier to contribute to project assembly. Project part number 8, the thermal propulsion rocket, is the most complex project part of this phase as it requires turbo motors and thus requires your best. Fix it, didn't think pioneers such as you could get this far. I am glad we have both proven them wrong.
Wow, that was a positive message for once, I think. I'm surprised. I guess I need to unlock other things for the other alternates to be available. But hey, I've still got 18, so not too bad. Now the little side quest is done. I'm going to jump in my train and head back out to where the new factory is going to be. Alright, so the end of the line got extended just a little bit. And now we're out to here. Now that we're over here, I've kind of got to make a decision. I've got two things I really need to build. The train station and the aluminum factory. And if I get just a little bit higher above the fog, it's a little bit easier to see. There's quite a bit of space, but there's also some things that I need to kind of work around. It's not a lot of nodes, but that one has just a ton of, I think, pure nitrogen nodes on there. So I definitely want to make sure that that's available in case I need to use that in the future. And if we get a little bit closer to the trees, this well right here is water, which we'll get back to in a second. And then there's also the Petroleum node. So my thinking is because the bauxite node is right there, and then the other three are on the ground kind of below it, I think I'm just going to set up this factory right on top of this water well. And then I'll just make sure that I still have the Petroleum node available in the future. And then as far as the nitrogen node, that actually seems like a decent place to put my train station. So I just need to make sure that I could still use it, but I could always just package them and put them on a train, because to package these, I need aluminum, which is going to be right here. So I think I could make this all work out pretty well. Let me get some foundations placed. And now I've got my foundations around the water extractor. And I went ahead and placed the miner. I don't know exactly how I'm going to deal with that, if I'm just going to try to avoid it completely, or the factory may just kind of consume it, and when I want to use that Petroleum node, I'm just going to have to belt it out of this factory, which is fine. Just going to play it by ear for now. And if you're wondering how I got my power out here, I just have a floating train station here at the end of my train line, and that way I can use the power. The foundations are just high enough that I'll be able to place all of these and there won't be any clipping. And then I'll bring up the pipes to up here, and then I'm not going to need anywhere close to all of the water that's coming out of here. So if in the future I do need that Petroleum node, there's a good chance I'll use the pure Petroleum recipe, and then I'll have the water nearby. I can just set up a second factory just right next door somewhere, and I can just send both the Petroleum and the water over. But since that doesn't have anything to do with this project, I don't want to bog myself down and just adding it on here for no reason, which is something I definitely would do in the past. So now that I have that laid out, I'm also going to use this area as basically the logistics floor. And so I want to give myself probably 3 foundations. Seems like a good amount of space. And I think I'll do the next floor up here, which will probably run straight into here. Yep. Just barely, but once it's actually moving, they would definitely clip into there. Which, surprisingly enough, is actually what I was hoping for, because that gives me an excuse to just put a giant hole in the middle of my factory. And that is just something fun to work around. Oh, Bean. You just appear sometimes. Let me work on this and, well, let's just drop him to the floor below. Be free, Bean. So much easier before I have all the machines in here. Let me get the rest of these foundations placed, and then we'll go over the spreadsheet and the blueprints. Let's go ahead and take a look at the spreadsheet. I mentioned in the beginning, I have a pure node, a normal node, and 2 impure nodes. With Mk.3 Miners, I can get 300 out of both of the impure nodes, bringing me to 600. The normal node will give me another 600, bringing me to 12. And fully overclocked, with the Mk.3 Miner, I can get 1200 per minute out of that pure node. Unfortunately, I am limited to the Mark V belts, which is at 780. So I could set it to 780 and get the full amount out of there. But the math is just so much easier if I just clock this to 600. And in the future, if for some reason I really need that bauxite, I can just overclock that node, put one splitter down, 600 can keep going to this aluminum factory, and I can send 600 somewhere else. I think it'll make my life a lot easier if I just clock it to 600. So I'm going to be getting 1800 bauxite out of this area. The large majority of this is just going to be turned into ingots, and then I can decide what I want to use them on in the future. But I do want to make sure that I make some of them for my storage and my dimensional depots, so I'm planning on making 30 of the aluminum sheets per minute and 20 of the casings. So there's going to be a bunch of similarities and just a few differences from my temporary factory. I'm going to be using the sloppy alumina alternate. Instead of the default recipe for the scrap, I'm going to be using the electrode aluminum scrap alternate. I'm definitely sticking with the pure aluminum ingots. There is an alternate recipe for the casings, but I'm going to stick with the default for that one as well. Because I'm going with the electrode aluminum scrap, it means I need petroleum coke instead of coal. But it's a little bit more efficient and I can get more scrap out of it. For petroleum coke, I need heavy oil residue. So in total, I need 180 crude oil for this to work. And 10 copper ingots that I'll have to find somewhere, but how hard could that be? So this factory isn't too complicated. For the most part, it's 2 refineries and then a bunch of smelters. Because I'm not going to be making the petroleum coke here. Alright, so let me walk you through the blueprint. So we start with the one on the right, which is going to be doing the sloppy alumina. These are going to be overclocked to 150%. So it's going to intake 300 bauxite and 300 water. It's going to give me 360 alumina solution. So far, pretty familiar. That is going to come over to here, which is going to be using the electrode aluminum scrap. And so this one is going to be overclocked to 200%. But instead of 540 like the other recipe gave me, this is giving me 600 aluminum scrap. And it's also giving me 210 water as a byproduct. I just need 120 coke for each one of these. As far as the builds and pipes and all that, it's going to be set up pretty similar. These ones are much closer together, but I still have my same priority pipeline junction set up here. And then I just need the one single pipe over here. This side right here is where the petroleum coke will get plugged in. And on this side is where the bauxite gets plugged in. The aluminum scrap exits here. And we're going to go upstairs. And up top is where I'm going to put all my smelters. Because I'm pretty sure I can put the amount of smelters in this area. So I can keep everything in the same 3x5 rectangle, just going vertically. So since the refineries were going to be indoors, I decided I want to play around with something. And instead of having a completely flat ceiling, I thought I could spice things up. So I've got my fan to suck up the smoke. And then I thought that it needed something. Instead of just putting the fan there, I wanted it to look more like a bigger kind of air duct, except for this pipe doesn't really fit the whole system nearly as much. Probably should be a much bigger pipe. But you know what? Minor detail. We're making baby steps with design here. If you're curious about this right here, it is just using the big concrete pillars. To get that to work, you place one, and then you want to go into Zoop and hold Control. And with Control, I can use the mouse wheel, and I can move it by that 5 degrees, and then I just zoop it down. And I delete this top one, grab another one, rotate it another 5 degrees, and you just keep going around. And eventually, you'll make that circle. And then you could also do every other one instead of every single one. Because every single one will give you more of a circle, whereas this one kind of will give you more of a kind of column shape or something. Just some more stuff you can play around with, but I just made that a blueprint so that I could slap that in there. And then I just added the frame pillar, and then I just added the 4-meter label signs to brighten it up a little bit. And for the top floor, here's my simple 4 smelter blueprint. Since each one of those refineries is going to be outputting 600 aluminum scrap, if they're completely overclocked, each one of these will intake 150 aluminum scrap, meaning I only need 4. Since it's a 2-to-1 ratio, we're going to get 75 ingots out of each one of these. So this may look really strange, and it is, but it saves me a little bit of time. Instead of having to figure out the power, since I knew I was going to want to do it down below each one of these, what I did here was I took a 4-meter foundation, because that's what these are going to be sitting on, and then I raised it up 2 meters. And then I built this entire blueprint on top of these foundations. And that way I could find just the right spot to put each of these power connections so that they'll clip straight through it and you won't see any of the cable. And then I just went through and deleted all the foundations. And I might as well just show you now. If you just lock this in place, and now I can nudge this down. Now they're in the right spot, and if I go underneath, all my power connections are going to be in the right spot. Little stuff like that can just help save a lot of time depending on how many of these you have to place. It's not a ton, but I have to place 6 of these, so that would be 24 smelters I don't have to do the power connections for. And to get everything to fit in the 3 foundation area, I have the load balancing going kind of inwards this way, and so the belt will plug in here. Pretty simple blueprint, but I like it. Now let's start placing the blueprints. So I want the water to face this way, which means the bauxite is also going to plug in on this side. And then the petroleum coke will plug in on the opposite side. And as far as the spacing goes, I really don't need a lot of space back here. To do the load balancing for the petroleum coke is going to be pretty easy. So I want to give myself more space up here. And since these have the next floor included, I want to make sure that these foundations are in line with these ones. So I'm going to line these up with these 3 foundations instead of trying to nudge it any closer. And now I can put it in blueprint mode. Make sure it's facing the right way. And I definitely need more space because I need to put 3 of these on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and just place it here. And we'll fill this in. And now I'm going to place the 3 sets on this side. Well, looks like we're not going to have this here. And I'm pretty sure this is just going to encompass this whole miner. And I'll have to send this somewhere else if I want to use it. As long as I'm not going to eventually clip into the miner, I'm okay with it. And then as far as the pipes go, all I need to do is place a floor hole right here. And I'm going to switch this to horizontal to vertical. And that's how the water from the water well is going to get in here. And I'll go over the math for that in just a second. And on this side, it's really easy because this one doesn't have a solid output. It's only outputting the solution. So I only have to do with the input of this one, which is my petroleum coke. And since there's 6 sets of these blueprints, it's pretty easy. I can just place 1 splitter here, same on that side, and then I'll just need another one here in the middle. But since I'm kind of tight for space, what I can do with this one is turn it around. And I'll have the petroleum coke come from underneath, and that's how it'll feed in. So now let me show you how the top comes together. These, I can put it in blueprint mode, but I am going to nudge it over. And then nudge it down 6 meters. And now what I want is this splitter right here to line up with that floor hole. And if we come downstairs, now we can see, oh, guess I forgot 1 wire there. But I've got all my power connections in place. Alright, so for whatever reason, it's in the blueprint. It just didn't show up in the hologram. Okay. For whatever reason, that cable just doesn't show up in the hologram. But when I place it, it shows up. So good enough for me. And now what I can do is just take the floor hole, make sure I have a Mark 5 lift, because this is going to be 600 scrap coming from the refinery below. And then a Mark 5 belt into here. And I have the 600 scrap load balance between the 4 smelters. And coming out of this merger, I'll have a belt of 300 aluminum ingots. And the great thing is this blueprint is exactly 3 foundations, so I can put it in blueprint mode, slam it up next to this one, and it just lines up right for the next one. Should do it from this side because I have more power. From here, it's easier just to nudge it all the way over. Make sure everything is lined up. There we go. Obviously, I'm going to need to make this just a little bit wider to make sure everything fits. So if I add one here, I'll probably add one to the other side so that I can keep the resource well thing in the middle. The other reason why I wanted to push these refineries farther back this way, as opposed to trying to center it on kind of the hole right there, is the tree. Those branches. If only my chainsaw could just do a little bit of trimming, oh, this would be so much easier. So let me do the basic belts and pipe work, and we'll move on to the next step. That didn't take too long, so the basic stuff is done. Obviously, still a lot of decorating to do, but we'll get there eventually. So I decided to add this because I had just enough space since I wanted to make sure that the foundations lined up. That meant that these were going to be just inside. And then that way I could extend this hole for just no good reason. But up here I'll use the glass foundation so that it's more usable. But down there, I'm probably going to try to avoid building right over it. Alright, so let's go through how we are going to really stress test this VIP junction. So the way all the math works, we got the resource well pressurizer. Completely overclocked, it's putting out 1800 meters cubed per minute. Wow. Somehow I managed to place that radar tower in just a spot where it doesn't actually highlight this resource node. But I got the Caterium and all the bauxite. That is impressive. Just a few meters outside. But I'm pretty sure it's 6 pure nodes, so all of them are putting out 300 meters cubed. The big difference between a resource well pressurizer for water as opposed to the normal water extractor is a water extractor will operate like pretty much any other building, where when its buffer completely fills up, it shuts off and it stops consuming power. The resource well pressurizers are going to be on all the time, no matter what. All of these nodes are completely full, but even if you had none of the nodes on there, that's just going to consume its full amount of power regardless. So the benefit for me is normally I like to get everything clocked at the right amount so they just continue to run and nothing shuts off. So the nice thing about resource well pressurizers is you can actually just send more into a system and just not worry about it because it won't shut off and I won't get that squiggly line on my power graph. So all of these are outputting 300 water. I'm only going to be using 2 of these. So on this side, we've got 1 pipe of 300. It goes into a pump. And then it's getting split between the 3 blueprints on this side. So let's go upstairs and we can go through the math. This machine requires 300 water per minute. This machine is going to output 210. Each blueprint is short 90 water. I need 270 water per minute, but I'm going to be feeding it 300 per minute. And this all works because of the good old priority junction here. Obviously, I still need to do a bit of belt work for the bauxite, but that is going to be super easy because each of these machines require 300. And those nodes are either going to be putting out 300 or 600. So I'm going to put that off till basically last. We've got the belt work for the petroleum coke. Very simple. Now that I have the outline for the factory, I am going to come right over here. Oh, guess I haven't picked up that drop pod. Or maybe I forgot to delete it. I bet that's what it was. And then we have this massive nitrogen node. So like I said, I'm just going to build the train station right on top of it. And that way I can make sure that I give it enough space to be able to still use it. And it'll be dual purpose most likely. Let me start with some foundations. And I've got a whole bunch of foundations. And it's actually 2 layers of foundations. So same thing I wanted to do over at the water one. This will make it a lot easier to be able to combine pipes and just deal with them instead of having to deal with it on the ground. Just bringing it up on top of a foundation, I think will just make my life a little bit easier. And then this is still a decent sized gap, but I'll be able to lower the rest of the floor around it so that I've got lots of room for logistics. And I wanted to do the same thing where I left a hole and that way I could see the resource well pressurizer. If you turn them on, they're kind of hard to forget they're there, but this one I'm not going to turn on until I actually need it, so I don't want to forget that I built right on top of this thing. I extended the train station just a little bit farther. Once I figured out the height, I just kind of needed to drag a bunch of foundations that way, make sure that I got the train line at just the right height, and then extend it back out here. With these beam blueprints, it's really easy to do. So far, it's coming along pretty nicely. So my thinking for this train line, because I do the right-hand drive, we'll have this line go straight this way. And then I'm going to do the same sort of thing I've done with other ones, where we're going to have the longer entrance. Things are going to pull back around this way, and then they're going to exit going that way. And that way the tracks won't have to cross over each other, and it's going to make it much easier to extend going this way, because then I can just extend the foundations, add another train station, and then you just extend this a little bit farther. And then you'd be able to just add it really easily to the exit line that's going to be on this side. And that's just going to leave through here. Obviously, quite a bit cleaner. This is kind of a major location, and it's definitely far enough away from my electronics factory that I want to be able to set this location and be able to come here. So the very first train line is going to be mine, and then all the ones that are going to be doing freight are going to be on the other side of this one. So if I want this train line to go right down the middle of this foundation, I'm going to start right here, and then I'm going to go back 2. And that's the tightest turn. If you wanted a more gradual turn, you could definitely just go back farther. Like from here, that would be 1, 2, 3.5. So from here, then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and a half, and if we lock it in place, we should see that it lines up really nicely with the crease of the foundations without me having to manually adjust it. But for this spot, I need it to go a little bit tighter. So we'll go to here, and then 1, 2, and then we can do the same thing, which means this is basically the closest I can line up my train, unless I wanted to make it curve in one more time. But I'd much rather it look like this. And here we go, the basics of the train station. It's gonna get extended, but I figure I just have no idea which trains are gonna get used and in what order. I'll figure that out later. I've laid it out in a way that it should be pretty easy to keep adding more. That also means I'm probably gonna only do the bare bones for decorations on this, but I think I'll have enough to do in this video anyways. I've got all my block signals set up, so hopefully things will be able to run smoothly. If I'm not mistaken, this is the Eastern Dune Forest. So this one's my train station. And then this is going to be Aluminum 1, and this is going to be where the coke comes in. So right now I just have one freight platform, but there's a good chance that might change in the future. But that's for a future video. I got started a little bit on the decorations, just kind of trying to play around with how I wanted to merge these two together. It's a work in progress. But for now, what I need to do is come along here, and I think this straight section right here is going to be where I add another intersection. We come up here right in between the fog layers. What I want to do is add an intersection here. I'm going to have it cut through here somewhere, and it's going to go down somewhere into the Crater Lakes. Somehow I'll get it down into there, because the blue Crater Lake has just a ton of resources, and one of them being a lot of oil. And that's where I'm going to make the petroleum coke, and then I'm going to ship that over by train. So yeah, with these blueprints, adding intersections is really easy because I've made all of these so they're 12 foundations apart from each other. That's 10, that would be 12. So if we go back to 6, and then I'm just going to count this one out, 6. No, wait, 5. There we go. All right, so to these middle 4 foundations, we should have 5 and 5. And then on this side, it's 5. So they're all nice and equally distanced. And then I just copy the blueprint, nudge it over, and now I can just connect the tracks up. So adding the intersections is super easy now. And then I just come around to 3 of the signals and turn them into path. And there I go. I just need to clean up the foundations, but I've got another 3-way intersection and I can continue my train. So that simple intersection has been extended just a little bit. So I wanted to try to drop this down because I've got a lot of elevation to start losing to get all the way down into the Crater Lake. So with most of these, I think I went with the 2-meter ramps. And then with some of these, I needed to start curving so I could miss the area. Get rid of some of these leaves. And then we just come down here until I got to this point. And I'm thinking this is a good spot to add a 4-way intersection, which is actually going to be the first 4-way intersection of this world. Off to the west through whatever this forest is called is the grassy fields. We've got the blue crater here, and if we head through that gap right there, make a left, we'll end up at the swamp. So just like before, I'm just going to copy my blueprint, and then I just add it to the end of each one of these. And now it's as easy as just connecting all the tracks. So we'll get the easy ones out of the way first. So I'll do all the straight ones. And then basically, I'm just going to pick a side. So we'll go from here to here, there to there. And then make sure that I do the other side. And now this one has all of its connections. This one's already connected to that side and that side, so now I just need to connect this one to this side. And I can do the same thing. All I need to do is connect it to the one on the right. Beautiful. And like I said, I'm doing right-hand drive, so I just need to do the right-hand one for all of the intersections as pass signals. And thankfully you can just replace block signals with the pass signal, so pretty easy to do. And that's the four-way intersection. I'm not going to worry about either of these two sides. I just thought it would be much easier just to add this now instead of trying to add it later. So from here, what I'm going to do is continue to ramp this down because we're still a little higher than I want to be. And the train station, I think, is just going to go in this area because it's just a real nice big open area. Now it just drops down right here, and then we continue to drop down, and then this thing appeared, but it wasn't there before. So I decided it would be easier to go around it, which would give me just a little bit more space to have the whole train station right here, instead of trying to cut the corner before. Then I would have to push all the train stations farther back that way. So we just have it go on a nice little journey, but I don't think there's any clipping. Managed to avoid it. And just turns right around here. And then we went from being off grid right here to now this is on the world grid, which I still like having the factories and whatnot on the world grid. This space just lines up really nicely with the world grid, but it does make bringing in the resources by belts or pipes just a little bit easier in my opinion. Although with the curve mode, you can make a lot of things look really good and it's a lot easier now. But I've got my 2 train stations because again, I figure like this is probably going to be an important location that I'm going to come back to in the future. So I'd like to have my own train station here. So that's the first one. And the second one is where I'm going to ship out that petroleum coke. Alright, so for that petroleum coke, what we're going to do is go right across the lake. We've got a whole bunch of nodes. So that one right there, I think is the only impure in the area. That one and that one are normal nodes. And then that one is a pure node. So let me quickly go over this section of the project. I need 720 petroleum coke in total, which is going to take 240 heavy oil residue. And to make that, I need 180 crude oil. So unfortunately, just more than what that impure node will put out, which would have been nice. I would have liked to just completely utilize the impure node instead of using just over half of a normal node, but that's okay. I don't think I'm going to run out of crude oil in this playthrough. Now another option is I could just use all 300 out of this normal node and just create as much petroleum coke as I could out of it. Petroleum coke actually does have quite a few other uses in other recipes, so it's not a bad option. But I don't think I'm going to run out of crude oil in this playthrough, so I'm going to do something a little bit different instead. Get rid of a few spitters. So I'm going to cover both of these nodes over here. I want to see if I can just squeeze this entire factory into just this small little space. So instead of having to take up valuable space over the water or something, because I don't need the water, but there's a good chance I'll need it in the future, so I don't want to take up any of that space. I'm going to use this one, and then this is just here as a placeholder, so I make sure that I have enough room to get this out of here. Eventually, I'm sure I'll want to use this pure node. But for right now, I'm just going to use this one. But I am just going to turn this into a little mini factory. Because with overclocking, I only need 6 refineries in total. So I think I'll probably have to go a little farther out this way. And use up a bunch more space this way. But I think I should have enough space to put the 3 refineries here. And then in front of them, I can almost put them right next to each other, except for I just need just a tiny bit more space. Hopefully just that much. Yeah, let's see. So let's do the recipes. The first step is making the heavy oil residue. Oh, need to grab some more power shards. I am making 240 across 3 machines, so 80 each. And we can color these purple for the heavy oil residue. And those are going to directly feed into these refineries, making the petroleum coke. And these are also going to be overclocked to 200%. Each one will output 240. 3 of them gives me my 720, which I can now carry on just one belt because of the Mark V. Excellent. So these ones can be black. Okay, so I think I should have enough space, but let's check. So the heavy oil residue is just going to feed straight into there. Color that purple. Thankfully, the petroleum coke just has the liquid input, and I don't have to worry about the solid over here. But on this side, I do have to worry about the polymer resin. I'm I'm going to be making 120 of it, and I'm just going to be sinking it. Maybe in the future I'll use it, but for now it's just sink points because I just need this to continue to run. Alright, so this may get a little bit interesting. I may need a little bit more space, but let's see if we can make this work. So if I put a merger right here, it's not clipping into this machine. Yeah, you could do this, but I don't know, it's clipping a little bit more than I like. And same with here, just a touch too much. So I think I'll probably move this 1, maybe 2 more meters. It'll still be compact, but I don't need to squish things together that much. Even though there's not a ton of room, I think I can make it work. And we're back. And as you can see, I've been busy. So I've got the bus in place, which really wasn't hard. I just lay out the foundations for basically the route it's going to take. And then I just place my blueprints every 7 foundations or closer in some spots where I need it. And then I go through and connect all the belts, delete the foundations, and you've got a nice little belt highway. And with these blueprints, I use it to bring the power all the way over here so that I don't have to use the power towers. I really like the power towers, but this is also just cleaner looking in my opinion. So thanks to a comment in the last video that just kind of inspired me to figure out just a different way to do the power on these curved parts. So it's not perfect, but I'm pretty happy with the way that it came out. So someone had mentioned that the curve mode works basically the exact same way as the rails. And so what I could do is basically just place a temporary rail line here, and then I could place pillars on the bottom, and then I could place more of my blueprints on the inside of the curve, just kind of more or less for show. But they would be in the exact right spot of the curve, and I could use it to kind of extend the power. And that is a great idea, and I'm sure I'll use it in some places. But it did get me thinking that maybe I could add just the wall outlets. In case you were thinking that you've just missed it all this time, no, these don't actually clip to the underside of belts. So to get those there, what I did was I just took a foundation, and so I'm just going to zoom it out to basically close to a curve, right? And then instead of the 4 meter, I'm just going to switch it to the 1 meter. And then I'm going to take the wall outlet, and if you attach it on the underside, now we have vertical nudging. I can nudge it up 1, and then if I hold control and page up 1 more time, it'll only do a 0.5 meter. And so now it's just barely clipping into the belt, but if you look at it from the top, it doesn't show through on this side, and that is good enough for me. And then from there, you can kind of nudge it to the right side of the belt. You can use the control nudge to just get it in just the right spot you want. And that way the cable work was just a little bit smoother. And here is the factory. So just a real little guy. I wanted it to be nice and clean, but I didn't really want this one to stand out too much. In the future, I'll be back here, and those will be much more exciting factories. So for this one, I just kind of want it inconspicuous over here in the corner. So that's why I went with asphalt and just some white windows. So if we come inside here, not too much has changed. I did add just a simple catwalk so you can get over all of this busyness. I did decide to cram it into a kind of a small spot. So to get everything to fit the way that I wanted, I flipped it 180. So instead of the heavy oil residue refineries being on this side, the oil comes around this way. Use the curve mode to miss the rock, because if I use the straight pipe mode, it would clip right into here. So thankfully the curve mode gets to cut that corner. And now I'm making my heavy oil residue. Just enough space. I don't think there's any clipping. It's just touching. It's not clipping, I promise. This is going to collect all of the polymer resin. And then that's just going to go into the sink. And then all 720 petroleum coke will get grouped up together and head on out onto that bus that we just looked at. I was really tempted to just cut straight through the lake, but I knew future me would just hate that so much because I know I'm going to end up wanting to use that space. So I went all the way around the edge, and it goes into the train station. And if we zoom in, right now it's just going to go into a sink. Once we get the factory up and running, then we'll send it into the actual train station, and then I can set up the train to head on over to the aluminum factory. Before we get this turned on, one thing you may have noticed is there's no pipe, and that's part of the plan. Because it needs such a short pipe, what I'm going to do is turn this on, and then I'll get the heavy oil residue going. And once this machine and the oil extractor are backed up, I'll just connect these pipes, and then we'll get the petroleum coke going. Everything will have a nice little buffer in it, and we'll be smooth sailing from there. All I need to do is connect this to this, and here we go. And there we go. We're all backed up to the oil extractor. Now I just need a Mark 1 pipe. And just like that, all the machines are at 100%. And there we go. 720 on the dot. Just what I wanted to see. And it never hurts to double check, so I put another throughput monitor on this side, and we've got 720 going into the sink right under the train station. Now let's set up the train. I'm going to go ahead and use this first freight platform, and we're going to set this one to load. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and use both of the floor holes. My best speed belt now is 780, and I'm going to be transporting 720 per minute. So that means there's only a difference of 60 per minute. When the train docks here, it takes about 30 seconds. 30 seconds is half a minute, so in that 30 seconds, 360 of the petroleum coke is going to build up inside of that storage container. Now with 360, and I already know that the difference between the belt speed and what I'm putting in here is 60, as long as the round trip is longer than 6 minutes, I could use just one belt and it would be fine. So I probably could get away with it. The only thing to worry about, freight cars have the 32 slots, petroleum coke stacks at 200, so each freight car can hold 6,400. So at a maximum, the round trip can't be over 8 9/8, whatever that comes out to. So I do have a window. I could get my train to go in between 6, but less than 8.5 minutes. And it's not like the train has too far to go, so there's a good chance that it won't run into too much traffic. But I could also just easily avoid any issues by just having 2 belts here. So now let's go underneath. And now I just want to line up the large storage container right underneath here. So we'll go, right there, looks good. And then I just use 2 Mark 5 lifts. And if you get it just close enough, it'll still kind of clip into this one, but then you won't need a belt right here. This is actually connected, which is nice. Now I just need to drag this belt over to here. The load balancing is going to be really easy, but I feel like I should do that before I start sending this into the train station, just because it will fill up pretty quickly. And here we have the really easy load balancing on this side. I'm using both of the outputs of the train station, and then those are being fed right into the industrial storage container. But I'm using a priority merger on the bottom. To get to 720, pretty easy. We've just got the Mark 5 belt, and then going into just a normal splitter, that'll split off 60. And then I just need to make sure that this doesn't ever stop, so I use the priority merger. And because I'll have plenty of wiggle room, the top one is a Mark 5, this one's actually a Mark 4, so that this will just never have any issues. And with both of those, I'll have no problem unloading everything. Now that my train stations are set up, let's build the train. So eventually, this one is going to have 2 freight cars. This one is not going to have an exciting name for now. We're just going to do aluminum 1 to blue crater 1. And that's where we're going to go. So blue crater 1 and then back to here. Almost forgot, I need to set up a sink over here so we can really get everything testing and not let it all back up. Alright, so now that that's set up, let's jump in the train. We'll go down to the blue crater and we'll get everything turned on. I need to delete that block signal so I can travel through here a little bit faster. And that's why I take the train, so I can remind myself to do those things. Alright, so before I forget, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this one. So it's been a little while, so I'll just mention it again. The way the pass signals work is by default, they are going to be set to red. So all 4 of the pass signals are set to red. Right now, no train can actually enter the intersection. And the way they work is it's basically first come, first served. The first path signal to get triggered will get to go first. And the way you trigger the pass signal is by passing through the signal before it. So this will stay red. So even if there are no trains around, that signal right there is going to stay red until my train crosses this line right here. But my train thinks that it's going to have to come to a stop. So it's going to start slowing down somewhere around here so it can stop over there in time. Now it's much more dramatic on the way down than it is going up. And so I'm going to do it for both sides. So by deleting this block signal, it's going to trigger the path signal when it crosses that line down there. And hopefully this amount of track means that the train won't slow down nearly as much. And things can kind of travel through here a little bit quicker. Because the quicker the trains get in and out of the intersection, the quicker another train can enter. And so I'll delete this block signal as well. Alright, let's go ahead and just delete this sink and this belt here. And get that sent on into the train. If you're using both of the inputs or outputs, this will often happen. Because the items are entering and leaving at the exact same rate, it only needs to use one of the lifts, and so one of them will generally get prioritized over the other. So if you have a setup like this and you just don't see any items on one of them, there's a good chance they're in the other one. After the train pauses for that 30 seconds, then you'll see both of them get kicked on because there will be more than one stack. Alright, so let's go ahead and turn this on. It's going to continue to run and I can get an accurate picture of the throughput. There's a good chance I'll probably add some time to this. I just don't want to add too much, but chances are something like 180 seconds is probably going to be a good amount to wait. Doesn't need to run constantly, but I do need to make sure that it's running, quicker than 8.5 minutes for its round trip. Surprisingly enough, I've got pretty much all the major stuff taken care of. I still need to build the bauxite over and the petroleum coke from the train station over, but both of them should be fairly short builds. I am going to just cover this thing, so I'm probably just going to give myself extra space on this side. And the factory is just going to be a little bit wider over here. And it's just going to encompass the whole miner. And now instead of a giant rectangle, I get another L-shaped factory. There's only 2 more machines that I need to put in here. And I could have easily put them in front of all of these. But I kind of like the idea of leaving this kind of open space in front of them. And then I can fit them all over here. There's only 2 last things. I need a constructor and an assembler. The constructor is only going to be making 20 aluminum casings, so it's going to require 30 aluminum ingots. And the assembler is going to be doing the aluminum sheets. It's going to be at 100%, so it's also going to need 30 aluminum ingots. Each set of 4 smelters is going to be outputting 300 ingots, so I just need to do a 5-way split on one of these, and that'll give me my 60. I don't know exactly how much storage I want for these. I'll probably have more storage for the sheets than I will the casings. Those sorts of things I usually start doing the decorating and then kind of figure out where they're going to fit in. I have a ton of space, so I'm not too worried about it. And then I just need 10 copper ingots. And it just so happens that the closest copper node is the one that I'm using for my temporary aluminum setup right now. So I can easily just use that same one. So that can be a real small, simple setup, and I'll just get that belted over. So really, it's just a lot of busy work, and then the decorations. The save is currently at about 177 hours and 35 minutes. So let's see how long this takes. Well, I may have spent a little bit more time on this than I planned. The save is now at 186 hours and 38 minutes. It wasn't just this itself that took me like 9 hours to do. But I did have to stop myself somewhere. So that train station down in the blue crater, no decorations, but don't worry, I'm gonna be out there pretty soon. Same with this train station. It started very much not finished, but I do like that it has at least some decorations, and the way I've done it is it'll be really easy to keep adding on, and I won't have to just delete whole walls and build them all over again. My copper ingots and petroleum coke are being sent into the factory, and they're just sinking down below right now. And it was the copper ingots that ended up taking a little bit more time than I planned. Or some of you may have guessed, I decided not to just make 10. I decided to make just a few more. So we just need to follow this right here. Decided to do some new stuff with the bus to try to just kind of anchor him into the wall. And yeah, I got a little carried away. But it looks pretty cool, right? I don't want to put all of the refineries inside, so I thought it would be fun to use some of the floodlights and just leave it without a roof. Attached to the side, I've got the 2 water extractors. It just needs 1 pump to get up this distance. I probably could have used the Mark 1 pump, but honestly I like the way the Mark 2 looked better. That comes up here and feeds the 16 water extractors. So there's 8 on each side. Now that I have Mk.3 miners, I can get 600 per minute out of here. And with the refineries fully overclocked, they intake 37.5 and output 93.75. In total, this has an input of 600 copper ore and an output of 1500 ingots. I wish I could say all of this went really smoothly, but unfortunately, this is where I ran into some hiccups and it took me a little while to diagnose it. So everything is working great now, but let me go ahead and load a previous save and I'm going to show you what the issue was. And we're back. So everything looks the same. Only difference is I'm using my hover pack now. And that unfortunately is the source of my problems. The very first video of this playthrough, I kind of laid out the things that I was going to do and wasn't going to do. And one of the things I've been avoiding is in the MAM. In the Petroleum tree, you've got the power switch and the priority power switch. I've decided not to use these in this playthrough because in the past, I've just had issues when using my hover pack. When you switch from like your main grid to a power grid that's behind a switch, it'll actually just turn all the machines off for just a split second. It is a very short amount of time, but on certain machines, I think it's a bigger time than others. And so my thinking was, if I just avoided using these completely, I would have no problem, and I could use my hover pack. That was my plan. Hindsight is 20/20. Maybe I should have thought about one more part to exclude, and that's the light control panel. These serve a very different function than the power switches. However, if you look at them, they do look pretty similar, and the functionality is pretty similar. You've just got this instead of like a full switch, it's just got a toggle for intensity, and there's a lot of similarities with them basically. And the big one is that you connect power on one side, and then power and the light control comes out on the other side. So normally what I do with these is I put them right at the beginning of the factory, and that way all of the lights in the factory will be controlled on the same switch. Because usually I just want to theme the whole factory for one color, and I'm not going to try to use multiple colors within the factory. That's just too complicated for me. But unfortunately I found out these work the same. So, as you probably just saw, all the lights just turned yellow. And now they're white. And if I move, yep, now they're yellow again. And if we watch the belts, it really does make a difference. We're going to start seeing gaps on the belt. There's no longer 750 on that belt. Obviously, it bounces right back. But now instead of these machines being at 100%, yep, now they're down to 91% because I keep switching it off depending on where exactly I am with the hover pack and which grid it's connecting to. So that was a really unfortunate discovery. Knowing this now, it seems obvious that this may have that bug too, and I probably should have tested that out. But I just didn't think of it. So thankfully right here, there's only 3 lights, and so rewiring this wasn't too bad. It was just kind of diagnosing the problem, realizing that my hover pack was shutting off the factory, and just couldn't understand why the machines were only at 90% when it just looked like they were running all the time until I moved into the wrong spot, and then they would turn off. But there are other places where I don't think rewiring it is going to be nearly as easy, and I really like it. Mainly my quartz area has a couple purple floodlights, and I really like that area, and I don't really want to change it. The weird and unfortunate thing is, even if I turn on fly mode, so I'm not actually using my hover pack because we don't see my hands out in front of me, it'll still happen. So just having the hover pack on, even if you're not using it, even if I was standing on the ground, it's switching from one side of the power switch to the other, just turns the whole thing off. And so really the best solution is just to put it in my dimensional depot. I'm probably going to be using the fly mod when I need to build, and then just using my jetpack whenever I'm, exploring and doing that sort of stuff. Because I still like to do the exploring just the normal way. Because I still want to have the option to use the lights and the light control panels, I think I'm just going to use the fly mode a little bit more now. In the future, I'll keep that in mind so that I can better design my lights and just keep them on a completely separate grid. Now it's time to go back to the future and continue the tour. Here we are back at the train station. Since the very first train station is the one I'm going to use for my personal use, I thought it would be nice to have some catwalks to be able to get around a little bit easier and not get run over by the train. And it gave me a spot to put some hypertubes. For now, I just have one going to the aluminum factory. Maybe I should add one to go over to the copper factory just in case. All of the copper ingots are being sent to the train station right now. And I've got 5 sinks set up. 3 of them are for the aluminum, the 2 copper ones are for the copper ingots. So 750 is one of those numbers where it's going to fluctuate a little bit, but seems pretty close. And same with 740. So this is the line where I'm taking the 10 out of, and it's headed off into the factory. And for that, I just needed to do a little bit of load balancing. I promise this looks way crazier than it is. I have 750 and I needed 10. So basically I needed 1/75th, which I know sounds horrible, but all you have to do is you split it into thirds. So that's 250, 250, and 250. So here's 500, there's 250. This 250 goes into a merger and then starts a 5-way split. So we can go from 250 down to 50, and then that goes into a merger. And then we do another 5-way split, and then I have my 10. Split it into thirds, and then fifths, and then fifths again. Everything else just gets regrouped together, so I have my 740 and my 10 ingots. It's not too bad. And on the other side of here is where all the belts are coming and going from. These 3 lines will be the aluminum ingots. So I have 2 lines of 600 and 1 of 540 because I'm keeping 60 in the factory to make my aluminum sheets and casings. Alright, let's go ahead and take the hypertube over. And here we are. So not too much has actually changed inside of here. The 3 lifts on this side and the 3 lifts on this side are just how I decided to bring all the aluminum ingots down. It would have been better to combine them up top and then just use Mark V belts, but I thought this looked cooler. Everything is the same over here, and then the way I decided to lay out my assembler and my constructor is like this. So I've got the 60 aluminum ingots getting split in half. So the assembler will get 30 aluminum ingots and the 10 copper, and then the constructor just needs the other 30. The outputs are just going straight ahead over here. Like I said, going into smart splitters, and then the overflow will get merged up into the middle and go into the sink. For the aluminum sheets, I went with 2 industrial storage containers, and then just 1 for the casings. I trap one of you in every single one of my factories, I swear. I wish the beans would bring me goodies like the lizard doggos. I think 1 lives in every single one of my factories. And then we've got this middle part here, which I wish was just a little bit more clear. But we've got the resource well extractor down below. And here is kind of like the alternate entrance out into the Titan Forest. I decided to go with just a nice big opening in the front. So I really like to do stairs like this where you use a ramp on the side of it. I really like the stairs, but just them by themselves just look a little bit funny. So I like to do something like this. And then on this side of the stairs, we've got all of the belts bringing the bauxite in. So we can follow these back. 2 of them are impure nodes, so they're just getting merged together. And then I just use the extension piece that I use for all of my belt blueprints on the bottom of the merger, so it's not just floating above the ground. And then the other 2 belts are the normal and the pure. Since I'm only clocking the pure to 600, they'll both be the same. And in certain spots, I got to get good use out of the curve belt mode, which I really like. And there's the other node. But thankfully, the factory's pretty close, and none of these had to go too far. Gonna go for a stroll bean. Well, at least he can get out of here. That's nice. Alright, so if we come over to here, this corner, Around the corner is the storage, and here we've got our elevator. Let's go up to the top floor first, and then the bottom floor is actually where we get everything started. Alright, so the elevator actually pops you out outside, because this part of the factory got pushed in a little bit, so that I could avoid clipping into the tree as much as possible, and I think I avoided it. I don't think any of it actually clips in. Yep, perfect. So you still get a nice view of all the bauxite coming in. So if we come up here, a similar entrance, but a lot shorter. So we've got the glass roof, lots of glass windows. So like I said, I could have merged these together before, but I thought it would just look cooler if they all kind of got grouped together here in the middle. Even though it's a little bit hard to see through the glass foundations. And then they go to the 3 lifts, and then they go all the way downstairs. I wasn't planning on making the top floor super compact, but it ended up being pretty compact. So let's go ahead and go down to the very bottom floor and take a look at that chaos. And here we are, logistics on the water extractor floor. Yeah. So this is just temporary, and it ended up just looking really funny. So I used the curve mode to get it from all the way up there into the sink. But then it let me add the merger into the middle, and so it like changed the shape ever so slightly, and things just looked super weird. But the reason I've done it this way is that's a smart splitter, and it's not set for overflow or anything like that. When you delete the smart splitter, it'll just repair the belt like it wasn't there. So when I'm ready to start, I just have to delete the smart splitters, and then all of the product will just start flowing into the factory. It just looks really chaotic until then. So we still got the Petroleum miner. Just needed to make sure I didn't build straight through it or anything, so I left it there, but it's not on. And then we've got all of our water extractors. As far as the belting goes, it was pretty easy. Since I already have the pipes coming up to floor holes, I just needed to make sure I missed these, although I can always move them in the future. And this right here is where all of the aluminum ingots are coming down. So what I did was with the first pair, I have those being merged together. So here's a line of 600. And then we have the second pair. Same thing, but just going in the opposite direction, so I had enough room. And then with the last pair, I have 300 going down this way. The other 300 just goes around this way into here and does its 5-way split. So now I have 60 on this belt, and it goes to the constructor and the assembler. And then I have 240 on this belt, grouping up with the 300, and then being sent over to the train station. And that's the factory. Now we can really get the true test going. So just as a reminder, I only need 270. So I am going to be feeding this system 30 more water than it needs. Normally, when it comes to aluminum, that means that everything would just come to a crashing halt at some point. But I'm confident that that is not going to happen here. To get this started, it's pretty easy. I just need one power connection from right here to here, and that'll turn on all the bauxite miners. The water is already turned on and waiting. And then I just need to delete that smart splitter and that smart splitter, and that'll get both the petroleum coke and the copper ingots sent into the factory. My favorite time. Let's watch this thing come to life. There we go. It's quite a bit less than what I'm making over at my temporary setup. Even though the aluminum sheets are used for the Mk 5 belts, I don't need a ton in storage. I think this is going to be more than enough. Because now what I can do is go back over my temporary setup, delete all of that, and I'm going to have 2 full containers of both the aluminum sheets and the casings. I can just bring those over to here, and then I'll basically just start sinking the aluminum casings almost instantly. This should be more than enough to supply my dimensional depots for what I need for the rest of the playthrough. And this right here is almost 1800 aluminum ingots that I can use for any of my future projects. This probably won't be enough for the entire playthrough, but this will be more than enough to get me through this phase. Once I get to the final phase, then I can kind of reevaluate, and if I want to scale things up bigger, then I can do that. But for now, this is a really good start. The train station is definitely going to need some more work in the future. I know that there are a number of factories in the future that are going to need aluminum. Once I figure out how many train stations, then I'll be able to finally close it off. I'm going to keep the theme the same. It'll be pretty basic. It's going to be a lot of asphalt and a lot of those frame foundations. I've let this run for quite a while now, and everything seems to be on at 100%. No issues. And as you can see, the casings are already deleted. I'll show you that in a second. Let's take a look at the machines and just double check. Alright, so we start with the first refinery, the sloppy alumina, staying completely full of water. That's a good sign. That leads into our electrode aluminum scrap. And it's emptying its water every single time. So nothing's backed up. Both of the machines, and in fact all of the machines, are all running at 100%. The fact that I'm inputting more water than this system can handle has not crashed it, and it won't. The modified VIP junction here works like a charm every time for me. And here we are back at the hub. So this right here was where I had my temporary setup, so it is all gone. No reason to keep it around, especially because I diverted the copper to go somewhere else, so it was really pointless. And now it's all cleaned up. And we should double check, and yeah, I am eating into my power a little bit more. The main culprit is definitely the bauxite and the aluminum, but the fact that I decided to go a little bit bigger than I needed to with the copper ingots, definitely didn't help on the power side of things. So I'm not necessarily close, but this right here is close enough that I think I want power to be my next project. The last thing I want to do is just spend hours rebooting my system just to get me back to square one. So from painful experience, it's just easier to stay on top of it. And that is going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for being here. For the first video in Phase 4, it has been very productive. I unlocked all the milestones for Tier 7, and even some of them for Tier 8. I can now build Mark 5 belts and Mark 3 miners. I built and used the hover pack for a few hours before I relegated it to my dimensional depot, never to be seen in this save again. I built and deleted a temporary aluminum factory, only to replace it with a permanent one, which is making 1,800 aluminum ingots. I'm using some of those to provide my dimensional depots with 30 aluminum sheets and 20 aluminum casings per minute, leaving me with an ample supply of aluminum ingots for my future projects. And because I needed a tiny bit of copper ingots, I now have over 1,400 ingots laying around that I can do whatever I want with. And copper ingots are one of those things where late in the game, you really can't have too many. Adding all of this to the save has brought me within about 6,000 megawatts of my total power production. And in this phase, I get access to a new fuel type that I'm pretty excited to use. It's going to be time to start playing with some rocket fuel. So look forward to that, and thanks for watching.